All right, guys, let's go ahead and re-look at this. Here we have two different triangles. Remember, we have a 30, 60, 90. Okay, so we'll put 30 degrees here, 60 degrees up here. And if you remember correctly, our hypotenuse is always going to be 2. Okay, so what a 30, 60, 90 degree triangle is a 1, 2, 3 triangle, with the 3 being the square root. So remember that the side measurement, the length of the 3 goes with the 30 degrees, so square root of 3 goes with the side that 30 degrees is on, and that leaves 1 over on the same side as the 60 degrees. The other triangle, special triangle we have is a 45, 45, 90. Okay, and hypotenuse is always 2. With a 45, 45, these are the same measurements, the same angles, the same degrees. So that means these two sides also need to measure the same. And this is a 2, 2, 2 triangle, but the only difference is these are the square root of 2. Okay. Another important thing to remember is SOH. When finding the reference angles and stuff for this lesson, you want to refer directly with SOH. So sine is the SO in SOH, and that's opposite side over your hypotenuse. Your cosine is the CAH, or CAH, and that's adjacent over hypotenuse. And then your tangent is the TOA, and that's opposite over adjacent. Okay, so take a second, kind of look that over, write it down, whatever you need to do. Now we're going to do some quick examples, like a refresher, a warm-up. So why don't you go ahead, pause the video, take a few minutes, try and figure out what the tangent of 30 degrees is, 60 degrees, and 45 degrees. So this would be where you would pause the video. Okay, now let's go ahead and find it. So 30 degrees is going to lie in quadrant 1 between 0 and 90 degrees. It's going to be on the closer side to the 0. Okay, so 30 degrees. Now, in order to find the reference angle, which is this measurement right here, you're going to take, since it's in quadrant 1, we're going to use that 0. 0 plus 30, and that's going to be 30 degrees. Okay, draw a triangle. So with this one, I am dealing with that 30, 60, 90 up here. Okay, remember that your hypotenuse is always 2, so your hypotenuse is going to be the measurement of this side right here. Okay, the line that's going from your center point to that makes up your angle, and that's always going to be 2. So 30 degrees is right here, so it's a 1, 2, 3 triangle. So that square root of 3 is going to go on the same side as that 30. Okay, so it's going to make up that 30 degrees, and that leaves 1 over here. If my tangent is my opposite over adjacent, so opposite of this reference angle would be 1. Okay, and then my adjacent would be that square root of 3. But can I have a square root of 3 as a radical? No. I need to simplify it. So in order to simplify it, I multiply the top and bottom by that square root of 3. 1 times square root of 3 is square root of 3. Square root of 3 times square root of 3, well, that's the square root of 9. And the square root of 9 equals 3. So this would be my answer. Okay. 60 degrees is going to be a little bit closer to that 90. Form your triangle. Okay, so the difference from 0 to 60, well, that's my reference angle is 60. So again, I'm dealing with that 30, 60, 90 triangle that we looked at earlier. Okay, where my hypotenuse, or this line, is always going to be 2. Okay, the That means here's my right angle. This is 30. So the square root of 3 always goes with that 30 degrees, and that's going to be right here. Okay, that leaves left over my 1. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. So opposite of this reference angle would be square root of 3. And my adjacent right next door to it would be 1. You can write it like that, or you can do square root of 3. Okay. Next one we have is 45 degrees, and that's halfway between 0 and 90, so that's gonna cut right through the center. Draw your triangle, right angle, so 45. So 0 to 45, well, that's my reference angle of 45. That means this is a 45, 45, 90 triangle. And if we remember back to our triangle reference point, it's a 2, 2, 2 triangle, where our hypotenuse is 2, but our sides are the square root of 2. Okay? Tangent, opposite over adjacent. So opposite of this reference angle would be that square root of 2. And then my adjacent would be this square root of 2. Well, square root of 2 divided by square root of 2 equals 1. Okay? So we know how to find that. Okay? Let's go ahead and look at our quadrants real quick. So we have a coordinate plane right here. Okay? This is going to be quadrant 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay? If you remember in class, we talked about all students take calculus. Okay? That tells us what is positive in each quadrant. So you start from quadrant 1 and you work your way around counterclockwise. So this is the all students take calculus. Okay? And in this is what is positive. So in this quadrant, sine is positive, cosine and tangent are all positive. Okay? In this quadrant, only sine is positive. That means cosine and tangent are both negative. In this quadrant, only tangent can be positive, so tangent's positive. Cosine is negative, sine is negative as well. And in the last quadrant, we have cosine is the only thing that is positive here. So tangent, sine are all going to be negative. So cosine is going to be positive. Tangent is negative, and sine is negative as well. Okay? So kind of remember that, a reference sheet of that, going back to it. All students take calculus. Everything is positive here. Only sine is positive. Only tangent is positive, and only cosine is positive there. Okay? Let's do some examples. All right, the first one, it tells us the cosine of what equals 1/2. All right, so right away, I know that I'm dealing with a 30, 60, 90 triangle because I have a 2 and I have a 1. Okay, so 30, 60, and then we'll put the 1 right here by that 60, and then this would be square root of 3. So that's the type of triangle I'm dealing with because I have a 1 and a 2. Cosine, if I think back to SOH CAH TOA, is going to be adjacent over hypotenuse. And my cosine is positive 1/2. So, right, all students take calculus. That means in this quadrant, can cosine be positive? Yes, everything's positive in that. So I'm just going to draw a triangle. In quadrant 2, only sine is positive, so I can't have a positive cosine. Quadrant 3, only tangent is positive, so I can't have a positive cosine. And here, cosine is positive, so this is where my other triangle is going to go. Draw your reference angles. Okay, 90, 90. Hypotenuse is always 2. Okay, cosine is the, sorry about that. Cosine is the adjacent over your hypotenuse. So my adjacent to my reference angle is going to be this side, and that is a measurement of 1. Okay, that leaves over here square root of 3. Okay, so if this is a 30, 60, 90, this is where my square root of 3 is, so that has to be 30 degrees. And that's 90. This leaves my reference angle of 60. So 0 plus 60 equals 60 degrees. And then 360, since it's in quadrant 4, this triangle is in quadrant 4, so we're going to use 360. 360 minus 60 degrees equals 300 degrees. And those would be my 2 answers. Okay? Go ahead and just try and pause the video. Look at sine of 1/2. Okay, remember sine of 1/2 is opposite over hypotenuse. You're going to look for where sine can be positive at. So go ahead and pause the video. All right, so let's work through this one together. All students take calculus. I have a positive sign, so everything is positive in quadrant 1. So I'm going to draw a triangle here. And I'm going to look for where sine is positive. So sine is positive here in quadrant 2, so that's where my other triangle is going to be. Okay. These are my reference angles. My hypotenuse is always 2. Okay. The opposite side of my reference angle is 1. So opposite is going to be over here and over here. That means, again, I'm dealing with the 30, 60, 90 triangle. So this would have to be the square root of 3. Okay, since I have a 1 and a 2. Now, square root of 3 goes directly with that 30 degrees. So this is the 30. 3 and 30 go together. So 180 minus, because any angle in this quadrant is going to be less than 180, okay? Because it's between 90 and 180. Remember, we always use 180 or 0 and 360 to find our measurement degrees. So 180 minus 30 equals 150. Okay. And then over here is positive about between 0 and 90 degrees. So I need to add to 0 30 degrees. So 0 plus 30 equals 30 degrees. And those would be my 2 answers. Okay. Okay. Now go ahead and just take a second and practice these. Here's some practice problems for you. Just go ahead and take a second to practice them, and then we can work through those together. All right. Here are the answer keys, the answers for those practice problems. We have the sine of x equals negative square root of 3 over 2. We want to find what x is. What degree is x? So using SOH CAH TOA, we discovered that sine was opposite over hypotenuse. So my opposite side had to be the square root of 3, and my hypotenuse is always 2. So I was dealing with a 30, 60, 90 degree triangle. If we zoom in on this one a little bit, it's a negative sign, so I couldn't have a positive sign here or here because sign is positive here. So in quadrant 3 and 4 is where sign would has to be negative always. So I drew a triangle, and then I opposite of my reference angle, so your x-axis makes up that reference angle, would have to be that negative square root of 3. So that's where I put that. Hypotenuse is always 2. That left 1 here. 30 goes with square root of 3. 30 goes with square root of 3. That left over 60 degrees for that. So 180 plus 60 because it's between 180 and 270. So you're adding 60 degrees equals 240. And then 360 minus 60 degrees equals 300. So that would be my other angle. So here are the answers for number 2. You can pause as you'd like. Number 3, number 4, and number 5. Okay. If you want to stay on, I can go through a couple of these practice problems with you. Okay, so we have the cosine of x equals square root of 2 over 2. Well, this has to be a 45-45 triangle because we're dealing with the square root of 2. So I draw my angles. Okay, cosine, so all students take calculus. So my cosine is positive. So I can have a positive cosine here and everything. And then where cosine is positive here, I can have. Okay. So cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So adjacent to my reference angle, so hypotenuse is always 2. So adjacent would be this measurement right here, and that would be that square root of 2. That leaves this side over here, square root of 2 as well. It's a 45-45 because we're dealing with all 2's. So my reference angle is going to be 45 for both. So I'm going to have 0 because I have quadrant 1. So with quadrant 1, I use 0 plus 45 equals 45 degrees. Oops. And then 360, since I have quadrant 4. Now, these 2 quadrants are the only 2 quadrants that you're going to differentiate between that 0 and 360. Everything else over here is going to be in reference to 180. So 0 minus 45, I subtract because it has to be less than 360, is going to be 315 degrees. Okay. Remember tangent of square root of 3, that is just square root of 3 over 1. They just dropped that 1. And that's going to be opposite over adjacent. Tangent of x equals negative 1. Well, I know that this is opposite over adjacent. And my measurement here and here has to be the same to get 1. So it's going to be negative square root of 2 over square root of 2. So that's going to be a 45-45 triangle. You can go ahead and practice those. Take a look at those for a second, and I'll bring back up my answer keys for you. And then just go ahead and practice, guys. That's all you can do. And then take the quiz.